The nature of the soul and its goal. The earliest idea is that a man, when he dies, is not annihilated. Something lives and goes on living even after the man is dead. Perhaps it would be better to compare the three most ancient nations, the Egyptians, the Babylonians, and the ancient Hindus, and take this idea from all of them. With the Egyptians and the Babylonians, we find a sort of soul idea, that of a double. Inside this body, according to them, there is another body which is moving and working here, and when the outer body dies, the double gets out and lives on for a certain length of time, but the life of the double is limited by the preservation of the outer body. If the body which the double has left is injured in any part, the double is sure to be injured in that part. That is why we find among the ancient Egyptians such solicitude to preserve the dead body of a person by embalming, building pyramids, etc. We find both with the Babylonians and the ancient Egyptians that this double cannot live on through eternity. It can at best live on for a certain time only, that is, just so long as the body it has left can be preserved. The next peculiarity is that there is an element of fear connected with this double. It is always unhappy and miserable. Its state of existence is one of extreme pain. It is again and again coming back to those that are living, asking for food and drink and enjoyments that it can no more have. It is wanting to drink of the waters of the Nile, the fresh waters which it can no more drink. It wants to get back those foods it used to enjoy while in this life, and when it finds it cannot get them, the double becomes fierce, sometimes threatening the living with death and disaster if it is not supplied with such food. Coming to Aryan thought, we at once find a very wide departure. There is still the double idea there, but it has become a sort of spiritual body, and one great difference is that the life of this spiritual body, the soul, or whatever you may call it, is not limited by the body it has left. On the contrary, it has obtained freedom from this body, and hence the peculiar Aryan custom of burning the dead. They want to get rid of the body which the person has left, while the Egyptian wants to preserve it by burying, embalming, and building pyramids. Apart from the most primitive system of doing away with the dead, amongst nations advanced to a certain extent, the method of doing away with the bodies of the dead is a great indication of their idea of the soul. Wherever we find the idea of a departed soul closely connected with the idea of the dead body, we always find the tendency to preserve the body, and we also find burying in some form or other. On the other hand, with those in whom the idea has developed that the soul is a separate entity from the body and will not be hurt if the dead body is even destroyed, burning is always the process resorted to. Thus we find among all ancient Aryan races burning of the dead, although the Parsis changed it to exposing the body on a tower. But the very name of the tower, Dakhma, means a burning place, showing that in ancient times they also used to burn their bodies. The other peculiarity is that among the Aryans there was no element of fear with these doubles. They are not coming down to ask for food or help, and when denied that help, they do not become ferocious or try to destroy those that are living. They rather are joyful, are glad at getting free. The fire of the funeral pyre is the symbol of disintegration. The symbol is asked to take the departed soul gently up and to carry it to the place where the fathers live, where there is no sorrow, where there is joy forever, and so on. Of these two ideas, we see at once that they are of a similar nature, the one optimistic and the other pessimistic, being the elementary. The one is the evolution of the other. It is quite possible that the Aryans themselves had or may have had in very ancient times exactly the same idea as the Egyptians. In studying their most ancient records, we find the possibility of this very idea. But it is quite a bright thing, something bright. When a man dies, this soul goes to live with the fathers and lives there enjoying their happiness. These fathers receive it with great kindness. This is the most ancient idea in India of a soul. Later on, this idea becomes higher and higher. Then it was found out that what they called the soul before was not really the soul. This bright body, fine body, however fine it might be, was a body after all. And all bodies must be made up of materials, either gross or fine. Whatever had form or shape must be limited and could not be eternal. Change is inherent in every form. How could that which is changeful be eternal? So, behind this bright body, as it were, they found something which was the soul of man. It was called the Atman, the self. This self idea then began. It had also to undergo various changes. By some, it was thought that this self was eternal, that it was very minute, almost as minute as an atom, that it lived in a certain part of the body, and when a man died, his self went away, taking along with it the bright body. There were other people who denied the atomic nature of the soul on the same ground on which they had denied that this bright body was the soul. Out of all these various opinions rose Sankhya philosophy, where at once we find immense differences. The idea there is that man has first this gross body, behind the gross body is the fine body, which is the vehicle of the mind, as it were, and behind even that is the self, the perceiver, as the Sankhyas call it, of the mind, and this is omnipresent. That is, your soul, my soul, everyone's soul is everywhere at the same time. If it is formless, how can it be said to occupy space? Everything that occupies space has form. The formless can only be infinite. So each soul is everywhere. The second theory put forward is still more startling. They all saw in ancient times that human beings are progressive, at least many of them. They grew in purity and power and knowledge. And the question was asked, whence was this knowledge, this purity, this strength which men manifested? Here is a baby without any knowledge. This baby grows and becomes a strong, powerful, and wise man. Whence did that baby get its wealth of knowledge and power? The answer was that it was in the soul. The soul of the baby had this knowledge and power from the very beginning. This power, this purity, this strength were in that soul, but they were unmanifested. They have become manifested. What is meant by this manifestation or unmanifestation? That each soul is pure and perfect, omnipotent and omniscient, as they say in the Sankhya, but it can manifest itself externally only according to the mind it has got. The mind is, as it were, the reflecting mirror of the soul. My mind reflects to a certain extent the powers of my soul, so your soul, and so everyone's. That mirror which is clearer reflects the soul better. So the manifestation varies according to the mind one possesses, but the souls in themselves are pure and perfect. There was another school who thought that this could not be. Though souls are pure and perfect by their nature, this purity and perfection become, as they say, contracted at times and expanded at other times. There are certain actions and certain thoughts which, as it were, contract the nature of the soul, and then also other thoughts and acts which bring its nature out, manifest it. This again is explained. All thoughts and actions that make the power and purity of the soul get contracted are evil actions, evil thoughts. And all those thoughts and actions which make the soul manifest itself, make the powers come out, as it were, are good and moral actions. The difference between the two theories is very slight. It is more or less a play on the words expansion and contraction. The one that holds that the variation only depends on the mind the soul has got is the better explanation, no doubt, but the contracting and expanding theory wants to take refuge behind the two words, and they should be asked what is meant by contraction of soul or expansion. Soul is a spirit. You can question what is meant by contraction or expansion with regard to material, whether gross, which we call matter, or fine, the mind. But beyond that, if it is not matter, that which is not bound by space or by time, how to explain the words contraction and expansion with regard to that? So it seems that this theory, which holds that the soul is pure and perfect all the time, only its nature is more reflected in some minds than in others, is the better. As the mind changes, its character grows, as it were, more and more clear and gives a better reflection of the soul. Thus it goes on until the mind has become so purified that it reflects fully the quality of the soul. Then the soul becomes liberated. This is the nature of the soul. What is the goal? The goal of the soul among all the different sects in India seems to be the same. There is one idea with all, and that is liberation. Man is infinite, and this limitation in which he exists now is not his nature. But through these limitations, he is struggling upward and forward until he reaches the infinite, the unlimited, his birthright, his nature. All these combinations and recombinations and manifestations that we see round us are not the aim or the goal, but merely by the way and in passing. These combinations, as earths and suns and moons and stars, right and wrong, good and bad, our laughter and our tears, our joys and sorrows, are to enable us to gain experience through which the soul manifests its pure nature and throws off limitation. No more then is it bound by laws either of internal or external nature. It has gone beyond all law, beyond all limitation, beyond all nature. Nature has come under the control of the soul, not the soul under the control of nature, as it thinks it is now. That is the one goal that the soul has, and all the succeeding steps through which it is manifesting, all the successive experiences through which it is passing in order to attain to that goal, freedom, are represented as its births. The soul is, as it were, taking up a lower body and trying to express itself through that. It finds that to be insufficient, throws it aside, and a higher one is taken up. Through that it struggles to express itself. That also is found to be insufficient, is rejected, and a higher one comes. So on and on until a body is found through which the soul manifests its highest aspirations. Then the soul becomes free. Now the question is, if the soul is infinite and exists everywhere, as it must do, if it is a spirit, what is meant by its taking up bodies and passing through body after body? The idea is that the soul neither comes nor goes, neither is born nor dies. How can the omnipresent be born? It is meaningless nonsense to say that the soul lives in a body. How can the unlimited live in a limited space? But as a man having a book in his hands reads one page and turns it over, goes to the next page, reads that, turns it over, and so on. Yet it is the book that is being turned over, the pages that are revolving, and not he. He is where he is, always. Even so with regard to the soul. The whole of nature is that book which the soul is reading. Each life, as it were, is one page of that book, and that read, it is turned over, and so on until the whole of the book is finished, and that soul becomes perfect, having got all the experiences of nature. Yet at the same time it never moved, nor came, nor went. It was only gathering experiences. But it appears to us that we are moving. The earth is moving, yet we think that the sun is moving instead of the earth, which we know to be a mistake, a delusion of the senses. So is also this, delusion that we are born and that we die, that we come or that we go. We neither come nor go, nor have we been born. For where is the soul to go? There is no place for it to go. Where is it not already? Thus the theory comes of the evolution of nature and the manifestation of the soul. The processes of evolution, higher and higher combinations, are not in the soul. It is already what it is. They are in nature. But as nature is evolving forward into higher and higher combinations, more and more of the majesty of the soul is manifesting itself. Suppose here is a screen, and behind the screen is wonderful scenery. There is one small hole in the screen through which we can catch only a little bit of that scenery behind. Suppose that hole becomes increased in size. As the hole increases in size, more and more of the scenery behind comes within the range of vision, and when the whole screen has disappeared, there is nothing between the scenery and you. You see the whole of it. This screen is the mind of man. Behind it is the majesty, the purity, the infinite power of the soul, and as the mind becomes clearer and clearer, purer and purer, more of the majesty of the soul manifests itself. Not that the soul is changing, but the change is in the screen. The soul is the unchangeable one, the immortal, the pure, the ever-blessed one. So at last the theory comes to this. From the highest to the lowest and most wicked man, in the greatest of human beings and the lowest of crawling worms under our feet, is the soul, pure and perfect, infinite and ever blessed. In the worm that soul is manifesting only an infinitesimal part of its power and purity, and in the greatest man it is manifesting most of it. The difference consists in the degree of manifestation, but not in the essence. Through all beings exists the same pure and perfect soul. There are also the ideas of heavens and other places, but these are thought to be second rate. The idea of heaven is thought to be a low idea. It arises from the desire for a place of enjoyment. We foolishly want to limit the whole universe with our present experience. Children think that the whole universe is full of children. Madmen think the whole universe a lunatic asylum, and so on. So, those to whom this world is but sense enjoyment, whose whole life is in eating and feasting, with very little difference between them and brute beasts, such are naturally found to conceive of places where they will have more enjoyments, because this life is short. Their desire for enjoyment is infinite, so they are bound to think of places where they will have unobstructed enjoyment of the senses. And we see, as we go on, that those who want to go to such places will have to go. They will dream, and when this dream is over, they will be in another dream where there is plenty of sense enjoyment. And when that dream breaks, they will have to think of something else. Thus, they will be driving about from dream to dream. Then comes the last theory, one more idea about the soul. If the soul is pure and perfect in its essence and nature, and if every soul is infinite and omnipresent, how is it that there can be many souls? There cannot be many infinites. There cannot be two even, not to speak of many. If there were two infinites, one would limit the other, and both become finite. The infinite can only be one, and boldly the last conclusion is approached, that it is but one and not two. Two birds are sitting on the same tree, one on the top, the other below, both of most beautiful plumage. The one eats the fruits, while the other remains calm and majestic, concentrated in its own glory. The lower bird is eating fruits, good and evil, going after sense enjoyments, and when it eats occasionally a bitter fruit, it gets higher and looks up and sees the other bird sitting there calm and majestic, neither caring for good fruit nor the bad, sufficient unto itself, seeking no enjoyment beyond itself. It itself is enjoyment. What to seek beyond itself? The lower bird looks at the upper bird and wants to get near. It goes a little higher, but its old impressions are upon it, and still it goes about eating the same fruit. Again, an exceptionally bitter fruit comes. It gets a shock, looks up. There the same calm and majestic one. It comes near but again is dragged down by past actions and continues to eat the sweet and bitter fruits. Again the exceptionally bitter fruit comes. The bird looks up, gets nearer, and as it begins to get nearer and nearer, the light from the plumage of the other bird is reflected upon it. Its own plumage is melting away, and when it has come sufficiently near, the whole vision changes. The lower bird never existed. It was always the upper bird, and what it took for the lower bird was only a little bit of a reflection. Such is the nature of the soul. This human soul goes after sense enjoyments, vanities of the world. Like animals, it lives only in the senses, lives only in momentary titillations of the nerves. When there comes a blow, for a moment the head reels, and everything begins to vanish, and it finds that the world was not what it thought it to be, that life was not so smooth. It looks upward and sees the infinite Lord a moment, catches a glimpse of the majestic one, comes a little nearer, but is dragged away by its past actions. Another blow comes, and sends it back again. It catches another glimpse of the infinite presence, comes nearer, and as it approaches nearer and nearer, it begins to find out that its individuality, its low, vulgar, intensely selfish individuality, is melting away. The desire to sacrifice the whole world to make that little thing happy is melting away. And as it gets gradually nearer and nearer, nature begins to melt away. When it has come sufficiently near, the whole vision changes, and it finds that it was the other bird, that this infinity which it had viewed as from a distance was its own self. This wonderful glimpse that it had got of the glory and majesty was its own self, and it indeed was that reality. The soul then finds that which is true in everything, that which is in every atom, everywhere present, the essence of all things, the God of this universe. Know that thou art He. Know that thou art free.